Today on Expert Connections, we're talking with a founder who says she can change the world through her brand new tech platform, offering something for those in the disabled community and a return on investment for her financial backers. It's all today as part of our series through the Lansing Regional Smart Zone. Expert Connections starts now. Today's Startup Connections story features a founder who wants to change the world with her brand new tech platform. Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton. This story, part of our ongoing series featuring the Lansing Regional Smart Zone and the high-tech, high-growth stories happening there. Meegan Winters is the CEO and co-founder of AbleVu, a platform providing accessibility information. It's actually an expansion project launched from her first startup, Able Eyes, which provides virtual tours, again, to help those with disabilities and special needs learn about spaces before they go. Meegan, all of this was sparked during an idea that you had during your many years as a special education teacher, as a school principal. Walk us back through that. First of all, welcome to the show. I'm so
Thank
excited to
you.
dive in that I'm just like going for it. Walk us through where this idea came from that took you personally out of the school system and into the startup world.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, first of all. Um, and I love telling this story. So I was a special education teacher for many years. I worked specifically with students on the autism spectrum. So that is one area that I'm super, super passionate about. When I was teaching, I just realized a need in the world that families who that had a child on the spectrum or with any disability seem to not be like having the same types of experiences as families that don't have a child with a disability. Like they aren't going out in their community, they aren't traveling the same way other families are. And we would go on field trips, and time after time after time, I would hear parents say, "Oh, that's her first time at a restaurant," or "That's his first time at the movies," or "her first time at the apple orchard." And I just remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is something that I take for granted that I can just do that so easily with my kids, and that's just not everybody's reality." So that was my like identification of the problem. And I'm like, okay, there has to be a solution to this problem. I had no idea what that solution was at that time. Um, like the Americans with Disabilities Act is obviously a law in place that ensures that public places are accessible for people with physical disabilities. But we don't have anything for people with invisible disabilities, which is a huge chunk of the population. The most recent statistic is almost 27% of the population has some form of physical or invisible disability, and 80% of that 27% is invisible disabilities. So, like, what could be like the tool that helps those families access their community and travel? So that was one piece of it. The other piece is that I had a best friend, Jessica, who was, she had muscular dystrophy and was a wheelchair user. Her and I lived together at college. We went to Central Michigan University, and we
Fire up,
had a
Chip.
fire up chips. We had a fabulous experience. However, when I look back on that experience, I think, man, we really went to the same few places over and over again. And we did that because we knew that she could get in the door, that she could navigate around, and that she could use the restroom. And had we had information about other places, we would have certainly had more experiences, and more businesses would have gotten our business and our money. And so it's like a win-win situation. Um, so eventually, what I came to the conclusion of was that what people are missing is information. Like that's what, in both of those scenarios, people were missing information and therefore missing out on experiences. So, yeah, that's the journey of like how the idea started.
So the whole idea is to be able to allow for more people to have these experiences by giving them the information in advance to be able to know what they're going to encounter. As a mother with a son with special needs, cognitive disabilities, I can tell you in firsthand, and you and I have had many conversations about this, the ability to prepare in advance and to, for someone who needs a plan in place and needs to know what he's going to encounter when he gets there. These are the things that many people who are abled do not even realize. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes those with some of the invisible disabilities, they may not even realize how much a tool like this could help. I was talking with someone, total side note, I'll get back to your founder story, was talking with someone who heard your episode of our Think Tank of Three podcast, which focuses on women sharing their stories. You shared your story there. And someone later was mentioning to me, just as someone who had knee surgery, she wanted to know what to expect. And just as
Mhm.
someone in general who likes to know what to expect. So, talk us through just super briefly so that people have an idea of what Able Eyes does, separate from AbleVu. Let's
Mhm.
talk about Able Eyes first. What does Able Eyes do in order to provide people that look, if you will, into a space before they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is kind of the starting point. I guess back to my starting story. My friend Jessica, she unfortunately passed away in 2015 as a result of her muscular dystrophy, and that was really like my wake up call. That was my like kick in the rear that I needed to say, like, Meegan, go do this thing that you have been like dreaming about for so many years. And so the initial idea was that what if every business had a virtual tour and they could see and walk through and navigate the space ahead of time? And a little bit differently than, I mean, any virtual tour is helpful, but what if you just expand that lens a little bit and start it in the parking lot and the pathway to the door, and then inside of a business and go into the restrooms and show the accessible stall? I mean, that's really not, it's only a few extra pictures to include those extra spaces that would again attract over a quarter of the population and their loved ones. So that was that's what Able Eyes is a virtual tour photography company. We provide virtual tours all over the U.S. for this purpose. It's also a great marketing tool for businesses, just in general. Like, it's been used in the marketing world for years and years. So it's something they put on their website, and it's going to really attract all customers. So that's the original vision with Able Eyes.
Megan, what types of challenges did you first encounter, if any, when you were setting out wanting to turn this into a reality?
That I knew nothing about anything. I obviously have education background in education, and I didn't know how to start a business, run a business, create an invoice, do sales. Like, I knew nothing. And so I like to just say that I taught myself through Google and YouTube, and I just learned how to become a business owner. Um, that was like on the business side, those were my struggles. On the product side, or for the mission side, it took me a little while to understand how to pitch this to a business. So of course I come at it from such a personal place. And so I see it as like, this is going to help so many people. It's going to be so great for the world, and it's going to help people with disabilities access your business. And, uh, you know, businesses would say, oh, this is a really great idea. They were very supportive and very kind, but didn't necessarily like what budget would, like, what does that mean? Like, what kind of budget would they use to pay for something like that? And I had to kind of swallow my pride on that and flip that narrative a little bit and say, look, this is an incredible marketing tool, period. However, if you expand this lens just a little bit, you are really marketing to this population of people that is never marketed to. Like, I sometimes say, like, how many apps and things are out there for people who are vegan and people who love dogs and people like, there are resources out there for tons and tons of groups of people that like the same things, but we don't have an information platform for people with disabilities, which is, so it's, one of the most underserved populations. And there's a ton of disposable income to be spent from that population. So I've had to educate myself on the financial benefits for the businesses. And so that took me a little bit of time to just get out of my heart. Not that I'm ever out of my heart, but I had to like move from my heart to my brain a little bit.
Absolutely. Sure. Like looking at the messages and how to actually speak to the business owner and turn the script around, as you were saying, in a way that your pitch now affects them and their ability to market their business and looking at it through their viewpoint, which totally makes sense as you're working on market penetration and growth. I want to talk about your evolution now into the next phase or the next company, if you will, the next startup that you're working on. So the initial startup, Able Eyes, ongoing, continuing. This provides the virtual tours. Tell us about AbleVu, this technology platform that you're working on, and how your kind of idea is beginning to evolve and take shape into a new component.
Yeah, absolutely. So at one point in the Able Eyes journey, like realized that this is a great idea, but if we want to impact the world, like if we want this to impact millions and millions and millions of people across the world, virtual tours are not a scalable business. It's a service, it's a boots on the ground service, it requires human beings. Like there it would be very, very difficult to scale a company that requires human beings at that level and with that skill set. Um, so what we decided to do was create a tech platform that would be could integrate virtual tours, but it's not the only thing. So we launched AbleVu the beginning of last year. It is our MVP, which is a minimum viable product, which just means that it's an inexpensive, starting point for us to just kind of test out the product and make sure that we have customers and users and figure out like exactly what we need to do to grow and build. Um, and what it is and how I describe it is it's the Yelp of accessibility information. It's a way for businesses to share their accessibility information and accommodations um, with that 25%, 27% of the population that has some form of disability. So it becomes a really inexpensive marketing tool for those businesses. One of the recent things I've been saying is for $299 a year and 20 minutes of your time, you can attract this huge portion of the population into your business. So these profiles are created by the businesses, so we're not rating, judging, critiquing them. It's very much information. Just that everyone has different needs. Somebody with autism has different needs than somebody who is blind or low vision, who's different from somebody who's a wheelchair user. So a profile includes things like a business name, description, of course. And then if they have a virtual tour, they can have that on their profile. They can add pictures and text information. We have a list of accessibility features that they just kind of turn on what they have, turn off what they don't. Again, we're not showing what they don't have, saying that they're doing anything wrong. And then there's also a place for people to ask questions directly to the business if they would like to. And that is, again, empowered by the businesses. So the businesses can make that information public if they choose. Like if it's, do you allow service animals, which every place should allow service animals. But let's say that's the question. And the business says, yes, we allow service animals. Here's the criteria stated by the law. They just post that and it becomes part of their profile. So as people ask questions, it just becomes more and more information that lives there. And then if the business chooses not to, make something public, they have the power to do that as well.
Securing funding can be a major hurdle for some startups. Now we're talking about building out a application. You started with your MVP, as you said, kind of the simplest version to be able to both test and show users what it's going to look
Mhm.
like, but it's not the full platform. So, from a funding aspect, talk to us about your decisions with AbleVu and even Able Eyes. What led into your decisions on to seek funding or not seek funding? Talk us through that process for you.
Yeah, so we're at this space where we are generating revenue, um, but we're also limited by this platform that we're on now. Like for example, our map where all the businesses live can only host 1,000, maybe 1,500 businesses before it's like maxed out. So we have to. So there are there's no code technology, which is like just a pre-boxed, like here is a website, make it your own. Like you can drop your own things in it. And then there's low code, which you can do some with, and then there is custom development. So this is a no code platform. So like the things that we are restricted on, like we are restricted on. Um, and so we are at a space where there's like we just can't build out what we're where we're at. So we have decided to we originally were actually going to go to low code and then to custom, down the road. But we decided, you know what, like why wait? Why build one more thing and then build one more thing after that? Let's just build the thing. So it obviously has a higher price tag with it when you're building something custom and developers and a development team. So we have decided to raise funds from investors. It has been I keep saying this is, and I love it when I'm sitting here in my office that has a mountain in the background. And I always keep saying it's just been a taller mountain than I anticipated. It just was a learning curve. I built AbleVu. I was like, I can do anything. I can build anything. I can learn anything. Like I can do this thing. But the learning curve was challenging just to like learn the language and the lingo and what's expected. And so it has been a journey, and I'm grateful for, again, the learning.
Tell us, a lot of founders end up in this position where they're seeking funding and they've never been in this world before, and a lot of founders get into whatever their startup is, having come from someplace else. You came from the world of education and
Mhm.
your background in working with those with disabilities and special needs. And so, like you mentioned off the top of the show, business was not your background, and now you're saying seeking funding was not in your background. Many founders are in this position. What's one piece of advice you have? What has helped you, because you've been able to secure funding, you're moving forward through this process? What has been most beneficial for you?
So, although I could have done it earlier, I am really grateful that I did this one thing. So I would say if a founder thinks that they are ever going to uh, decide to raise funds, to spend a period of time, like 3, maybe 6 months, just talking to people, just learning from others who have been through this. I spent about 3 months before I never even asked for a dollar. During these 3 months of just like meeting with people who do invest, talking with people that invest, whether that's a VC or an angel investor, um, talking to people who have taken on investors and what their experience was and what their tips and tricks and things were. And um, networking. Like there's a lot, and this is newer to me too. There are a lot of tech networks, startup networks in Michigan, and I'm sure in every state. And so getting connected with those networks is really, really beneficial to like learn. So I would say learn before asking for a dollar. Spend that 3 to 6 months just understanding the lingo of what ARR is and MRR is and what pre-seed and seed and series A and like what all these different things mean. And that'd be my biggest piece of advice.
Okay, so before we kind of wrap up here, there is something that I find extra special about what you're building with AbleVu. And this has to do with who is able to create profiles on this platform. Tell our audience about this really cool aspect.
Yeah, so with the next version of this platform, which is what we're raising funds for, we are creating what we're right now calling a contributor model. And that is a way for people with disabilities or without, but I really get excited about it being people with disabilities, being able to use this as a form of generating income for themselves. So let's say someone with a disability goes to a coffee shop and that coffee shop doesn't have an AbleVu profile. They would be able to take a few pictures, create a profile, submit it. It would remain locked on our profile or on our map. We would send the business an email that says, a visitor with a disability has visited your business. They had enjoyed their experience and would like to share it with others. They've started a profile for you. Would you like to accept it, change it, edit it? and open it and unlock it for $299 a year, which the pricing may change a little bit in this next round too, or might have a tiered process or something. And if they unlock it, that person would get a payout for creating that profile. So, um, 30, I think it's 35% or 33% is what we currently have. So it's around $100. So for that 20 minutes, that person that doesn't have the same opportunities for employment could make $100. And so it's very Uberish. It's empowering. It just be something that somebody is doing in their just everyday life, and they can make money doing it. And like I said, it like lights my soul on fire to like think about just that full circle of this thing that's going to help millions and millions of people, and that it's also an employment opportunity for millions and millions of people. And so yeah, that's where we're headed, and that's our scaling plan for the future. And so that puts us like a sales team of one to a sales team of infinite people out there creating profiles.
Meegan, talking with world changers are my favorite on this show. And so I love hearing your story, love hearing you guide us through this. Wishing you the best as you're working on funding and looking forward to seeing those next steps for you. Before we go, one final maybe piece of advice for any aspiring entrepreneurs or startup founders who want to start a business with a strong social mission. And I say social mission, and I don't mean to, I
Mhm.
feel like that waters down what you're doing. Like as if like social issues are these light issues in the world, they are not. They are life-changing issues. But other founders who maybe have an idea that they haven't moved on yet, what's your advice for them?
Again, I would go back to, educating yourself on, and because I do think that there is, especially when you're talking to investors, I think that there can be a divide, and not that investors are bad people at all. Like it's just when you think of social issues, I think a lot of investors don't think, oh, well, this is their job is to make their money back. Like that's the person that you're talking to. Their job is to make the funds back for that fund. Like that's so like I understand that. But when they see a social issue or hear a social issue, you really have to have a strong case for your scaling. Like, how is this business going to make money back to this fund or bring money back into, multiply in what they invested into the company? So, um, that again, like back to my experience with AbleEyes and really having to release, like, not release, but express my passion in a different way. It puts you back up into your brain of like, how is this thing going to make money? And how is it going to also impact people?
And what a win-win to have something that can both make money and change lives. That is what this world needs. Meegan, loved having you on the show. Thank you for sharing your story. We will link to AbleVu in our show notes so everyone can check out what you're doing with your tech platform, as well as AbleEyes. Everyone, if you don't already have a virtual tour of your space that includes accessibility, then check out AbleEyes for more information on that. Meegan, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is all for this episode of Expert Connections. Stay tuned for the next video in our Startups Connection series. I will see you next time.